So here we are. We have come to the eve of the American Civil War, and I was thinking yesterday in some of the Decoration Day, now we call it Memorial Day ceremonies, as people were talking about how we have to continue to look to not just the Declaration, but to our commitment to liberty and equality and justice, and I'm wondering what they thought about the fact that some points in our history, people have been willing to fight for that. And one of them, most, I would say, transfiguring is what happened during the American Civil War from 1861 to 1865. Well, here we are. We're on the eve. The House is definitely divided by the national election of 1860, as I said in my background. We have actually maybe the most historic political realignment of political parties in our history. The Democratic Party at that point was fractured between North and South. The northern wing was more or less in favor of an anti-slavery stance, at least keeping slavery out of the far west. The South would have nothing to do with that. And so different candidates were run for different sections of the country within the Democratic Party. The Republican Party had a second favorite son, which was Lincoln. He was on everybody's list as number 2, and people like William Seward and others were number 1. But Lincoln got the 4th ballot and got the nomination. And so there was an election. It was, up to that point, the most hotly contested national election in our history. But just before that happened, within a year of that, another event occurred which, if anything, drove the wedge between North and South to the bone. And that was something that was a great fear in the South. And it was something that was unexpected in the North, so it was startling in many respects, and that was what was called John Brown's raid. And we first met Mr. Brown back in Kansas, battling back in the early 1850s. He was not an angelic person. He was just as aggressive in behalf of North and as an anti-slavery guy as people who were in favor of slavery in Kansas were at the time. There were massacres on both sides. John Brown killed 5 people of a family in their beds as they slept at Pottawatomie, Kansas. But that was 5 years before this. And as the war is approaching, people are looking at the ultimate violent means to try to settle their differences. And Brown thought at the time that he would go a little bit further and he would try to incite slaves in the South, particularly in the northern part of Virginia, what is now West Virginia, to rise up, to create a area in that region that would be a province unto itself and to begin to lead the country toward an anti-slavery republic. It didn't work. It lasted for about 24 hours. Marines were dispatched from the Washington area. He was captured. 6 weeks later, he was indicted, tried, convicted, and hanged. But his startling act and the number of people who were passing judgment on it from North and South tended to further polarize, probably to the nth degree, opinion in this country. So in that backdrop, we have the election. Lincoln wins all the electoral votes but a few out of New Jersey, all the electoral votes out of the North, none in the South. It's interesting that the person that he debated, Stephen Douglas, who was no friend of the slave or anti-slavery, a Democratic leader in the North and had been a senator and was a senator of Illinois at the time. Nevertheless, it just shows in our history there are some moments where people sort of rise above their immediate concerns and views. Douglas could see that the Republican Party was probably going to get the plurality of the vote. Lincoln got 40%. And he got, you need 152 electoral votes then. Lincoln got about 180, if I remember right. And so Douglas said, I'm going into the South, even though I'm not welcome there, and I'm going to preach union to Southern secessionists who otherwise are saying, if Lincoln wins, we secede. He didn't help himself, but probably there's a footnote there in history for him. And it was brave of him to do that. He could easily have been shot right off the stage, but he did it. And the other thing I want to say, and then next time, and I have 4 pages written for you, and we're going to talk for 5 to 10 minutes about 4 years of Civil War, if we can do that. And in the last session in June, we're going to try to pull it all back to July 4th. But I will say that Lincoln, at this point, Lincoln in 1860 is trying to hold the Union together. Some histories that were written about him in the early 20th century and late 19th century were saying, basically he was a softie, just couldn't do it. But Lincoln famously said privately and publicly that compromise on the main question of the extension of slavery is unacceptable. And he said, and this is a famous quote, I guess you would say, let us have faith that right makes might, not the opposite. And in that faith, let us to the end dare to do our duty as we understand it. And then this kind of echoes the way he was in his second inaugural, where he says, with malice toward none and so forth. But people don't usually read the paragraph before that. And what he basically says is, if we have to fight this out, this is in March of 1865, until the last drop of blood from the bondsman's lash is equaled by the sword, we will do so. And he says, with malice toward none, with, and so forth. Here he says, the tug has to come. And let nobody mistake this. Lincoln was aware he's now the President of the United States. Secede or not, he said, stand firm. Better now than any time hereafter. So we're at war. We'll talk about that next time. Yes?
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So I think I read somewhere the day that John Brown got assassinated, pretty much, Frederick Douglass was supposed to be with him. Is that true? 'Cause I know you.
Stephen Douglas, you mean?
Yeah,
Frederick Douglass. Yeah. So
Frederick.
2 things. We talked a couple meetings ago about individuals and differences they could make in this rising debate over free slave. And Frederick Douglass, obviously a champion of abolition at that time. For her part, not a spokesperson, but did with her feet what others were doing with their minds and their mouths. Harriet Tubman was going into the South and was bringing slaves out, and she did 300 people on her own. Both of those people were approached by Brown or intermediaries. Douglass listened. He actually talked to John Brown. He listened to him, and he tried to dissuade him from doing it, basically saying that this is suicide, what you're going to do. And it will do nothing for us, because all it will do is drive people more to extremes. Harriet Tubman, we can only imagine, because there's no record of a conversation, and she didn't write her stuff down, which Frederick Douglass did, but it's reported that she discounted that as suicide and so refused to join. But so rhythms back and forth, pathways across, that's our history.